Hey, you think I don't know about YouTube? Well, I do. With today's story, you'll laugh, you'll learn, and you'll remember where you come from and recognize where you are going. The elders say, what the old sees while sitting, a young cannot see even from the top of a tree. So come now, listen well and let the story speak to your spirit.
They say that before the hills of Dedza learned to keep secrets, and before Lake Malawi learned to swallow the sun every evening, animals still gathered under the same moon and understood one another's silences. In those days, the village of Ntondo lay between red earth and tall musangu trees, where dust clung to hooves and feathers alike, and life moved to the rhythm of hunger and harvest. It was a place where the wind carried smells of millet porridge and wet clay, and where every creature, from the smallest field mouse to the tallest giraffe passing through the plains, knew which parts were safe and which parts remembered blood. At the heart of Ntondo lived a cow called Ngombe wa Moyo, the cow of life. Her hide was the color of roasted groundnuts, her eyes deep and patient like old wells, and her horns curved gently as if they had learned humility before strength. She was not the biggest cow that had ever walked the land, but her milk flowed thick and warm, sweet enough to quiet quarrels, and strong enough to raise weak calves, orphaned kids, and even sick elders of fur and feather. It was said that when Ngombe wa Moyo breathed, the dry grass listened, and when she lay down, the earth rested. Every morning, as mist lifted from the low fields and guinea fowls scurried like scattered beads, Ngombe wa Moyo walked slowly to the village clearing. There, goats waited with restless hooves, sheep with tired eyes, and even the proud zebra lowered his head without knowing why. Milk was shared, gourds were filled, bellies were soothed, and strength returned to limbs that had nearly forgotten how to stand. And after the gourds were emptied, everyone went their way, hooves clapping, paws padding, wings beating, as if the milk had always been theirs. In Ntondo, there was a saying whispered by the elders of old that a river which forgets its source will one day dry its own bed. But sayings are like seeds. They only grow when someone bends to plant them. Ngombe wa Moyo never complained. She watched seasons pass, watched calves grow into stubborn bulls, watched clever animals become important, and important animals become loud. She carried the village through famine when the rains came late, and through sickness when the cold winds crept down from the plateau. Her body grew lean, then full, then lean again, shaped by generosity that was never counted. Among those who drank her milk most eagerly was Kalulu the hare, quick of mind and quicker of tongue. Kalulu praised wisdom in the morning and practiced cunning by noon. He often spoke of progress, of new ways of living, of how Ntondo must look forward and not backward. Each time his whiskers were wet with Ngombe wa Moyo's milk, he nodded solemnly, as if storing gratitude somewhere deep. But gratitude that is stored too long often turns sour. Fisi the hyena laughed loudly whenever milk spilled. His laughter shook his spotted sides and echoed into the thickets. He mocked the old ways and said that survival belonged to those who grabbed first. Milk to him was a prize, not a gift. He drank and licked his jaws and spoke of how the village owed itself nothing but hunger and cunning. There was also Mbewa the mouse, who drank only what fell from others' mouths and yet understood more than most. There was Kunda the dove,
who watched from above and carried news on her wings. There was Njovu the elephant, heavy with memory, who remembered when Ng'ombe wa Moyo had once blocked a charging fire with her body and saved half the village. But even Njovu grew quiet with age, and quiet memories fade faster than loud lies. As years turned like grinding stones, Ng'ombe wa Moyo's steps grew slower. Her breath came deeper. The milk still flowed, but each drop took more from her bones. The village noticed the slowing, but mistook it for stubbornness. They noticed the thinning hide, but called it age, as if age were a fault. One season, the rain delayed themselves, teasing the clouds but never delivering them. The earth cracked its lips, grass turned brittle. Hunger began to pace the edges of Unthondo like a patient predator. Still, Ng'ombe wa Moyo came each morning, still filled the gods, still fed the village. But her shadow grew longer, and her ribs learnt the language of counting. Whispers began then, carried by the wind and fed by fear. Some animals murmured that the cow was no longer enough. Others said the village had grown too large to depend on one back. Kalulu suggested change with the softness of a feather, but the sharpness of a thorn. He spoke of using Ng'ombe wa Moyo more efficiently, of taking more while she still could give. Visi laughed and said aloud what others feared to think, that a cow that fed everyone owed everyone everything. Ng'ombe wa Moyo heard these sounds as one hears distant thunder, knowing a storm is arguing with itself somewhere beyond sight. Then came the night when the moon hid behind thin clouds, ashamed to watch. A council of animals gathered under the baobab, whose roots drank from old stories. They spoke not of thanks, but of survival. They weighed Ng'ombe wa Moyo's worth not in years of life given, but in how much more could be taken. Even Njovu's memory could not outweigh hunger's voice. By morning, the decision had settled like dust. Ng'ombe wa Moyo would be kept closer, watched, milked more often, rested less. It was not spoken as cruelty, but as necessity, the favorite mask of selfishness. Days turned harsh. The cow's body gave, but her spirit began to wander. The milk thinned, not because she wished it so, but because bodies like gods can only pour what they hold. Complaints grew louder. Fisi snarled that the cow was ungrateful for all the village had allowed her to be. Kalulu nodded and added that contribution must be measured. Then one dawn, Ng'ombe wa Moyo did not rise. The village gathered, alarm flapping like trapped birds. They found her lying beneath the msango tree, breath shallow, eyes reflecting a sky that had forgotten rain. Panic rushed through hooves and paws. They shook her, called upon her, demanded without realizing they were demanding. As the sun climbed, Ng'ombe wa Moyo exhaled a long breath that carried the smell of grass after rain, and then she was still. Silence fell, thick and uncomfortable. For the first time, the clearing felt empty. Gods lay dry. Calves cried without knowing why. The village stared at the body that had been their river. Grief came, but it came late and clumsy. Some wailed loudly, others calculated quietly. Fisi licked his lips. Kalulu spoke of honoring her by not letting anything go to waste. The idea settled quickly, like fire to dry grass. They told themselves it was respect, that her body could feed them one last time. And so they took from her again, this time without even the exchange of milk. That night, as the village slept with full bellies and uneasy dreams, the wind changed its direction. Nkunda the dove woke first, feathers trembling.
She felt it before she saw it, a hollowness where fullness had always lived. The next morning, no dew kissed the grass, no birds sang. The path to the stream cracked further. The village waited for the familiar rhythm of life, but nothing answered.
Days passed. Hunger returned, sharper than before. Without Ng'ombe Moyo's milk, the young weakened. The sick failed to rise, and even the strong felt a trembling in their limbs. They searched for other sources, other saviors, but the land remembered how it had been treated. Then strange things began to happen. Milk appeared in dreams, but not in gods. The taste of warmth lingered on tongues that had nothing to swallow. At night, some animals heard low humming near the msangu tree, a sound like contentment wrapped in sorrow. Those who followed the sound found only dry earth shaped like a resting cow. Mbewa, the mouse, was the first to understand. Small creatures often see what large ones overlook. He remembered the proverb of the river and its source. He spoke quietly, but quiet truths struggle in loud villages. One evening, as the sun bled into Lake Malawi, a shadow moved across the clearing. The air thickened with memory. From the place where Ng'ombe Moyo had last breathed, a presence rose, not of flesh, but of spirit, shaped like a cow made of moonlight and dust. No horns threatened, no hooves struck. The presence simply stood, and the village felt its own weight. The spirit did not speak with words, it spoke with feeling. It reminded the village of mornings they had forgotten, of milk warming cold mouths, of life sustained without counting. It showed them how gratitude, like food, must be given to nourish both giver and receiver. Without it, even abundance becomes poison.
Kalulu felt his cleverness shrink. Fisi's laughter dried in his throat. Njovu wept tears heavy as stones. When the presence faded, the land did not immediately heal. Lessons like wounds take time to close. But something had shifted. The animals gathered not to take, but to remember. They sang not of hunger, but of thanks they had failed to offer. They tended the place beneath the msangu tree. They poured the first water there whenever rain finally came. They taught their young the story before teaching them how to eat. Slowly, grass returned. Streams remembered their paths. A new calf was born in a distant valley, and when she walked into Ntondo years later, the village did not rush her. They greeted her with songs, with patience, with offerings before requests. From that time, the elders said that gratitude is nourishment too, invisible but essential. And they warned that a village that feeds its belly but starves its heart will one day find both empty. And so, when the wind passes through Ntondo at dusk, carrying the scent of milk that no one can see, the animals bow their heads, remembering the cow who fed them all and the thanks that came too late to save her, but not too late to save themselves.
My dear ones, this is where our story ends for now. But tell me, what did your heart feel as you listened? Share your thoughts in the comment, You know Grandma loves to hear from you. And don't forget, press that subscribe button, like the story, and ring the little bell so that every time I come back here, you will be the first to join me. Until then, may your paths be safe, fruitful, and peaceful. Remember,
keep your heart warm, your spirit curious and kind.